The communication array crackled with desperate voices as Commander Zethkar watched his fleet's formation crumble. 37 Valorian ships, the pride of the Galactic Defense Coalition, now reduced to scattered debris floating in the void around Kepler 442b. His command vessel, the Stellar Triumph, shuddered under another barrage from the Vex-High destroyer formation. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Dawn's Edge and the Celestial Guardian," reported his tactical officer, her normally steady voice betraying the fear they all felt. "The Vex-High are moving to surround our remaining ships." Zethkar's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display, watching as the insectoid ships of their enemy moved with terrifying coordination. Each Vex-High vessel resembled a massive praying mantis, their organic hulls glistening with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with their weapon charges. They had been hunting the Coalition forces for 3 standard cycles now, systematically destroying every outpost, every colony, every hope of resistance. "Status on the civilian evacuation?" Zethkar asked, though he already knew the answer would be grim. "Still in progress, sir. The refugee ships are loading the last of the colonists from New Thessia, but they need at least another hour to complete the evacuation and reach safe jump distance." Zethkar nodded grimly. 1 hour they didn't have. His remaining 12 ships were all that stood between 50,000 innocent lives and the Vex-High swarm that had already consumed 17 worlds. The insectoids showed no mercy, no interest in negotiation. They simply harvested everything organic they encountered, leaving nothing but stripped planets in their wake. "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead Vex-High hive ship," the communications officer announced. "Put it through!" The main screen flickered, revealing the nightmare visage of a Vex-High hive queen. Her compound eyes reflected the bridge lighting as her mandibles clicked in what their translators interpreted as amusement. When she spoke, her voice was like the sound of breaking glass, mixed with the buzz of 1,000 insects. "Commander Zethkar of the failing coalition," she began, each word dripping with contempt. "Your resistance has been entertaining, but your ships are broken, your allies are dead, and your precious civilians cower behind your failing shields. Surrender now, and we will make your harvesting swift." Zethkar stood straighter, his military training taking over despite the hopelessness of their situation. "Queen Vexithara, you'll find that Coalition forces don't surrender easily. We'll fight to our last breath." The Queen's laughter was like nails on metal. "Your last breath approaches swiftly, Commander. We have tasted victory on 17 worlds. Your coalition crumbles before our might. What can your pathetic remnant possibly do against the swarm?" Before Zethkar could respond, his science officer's voice cut through the bridge tension. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Something's coming out of hyperspace." The tactical display shifted, showing new contacts appearing at the system's periphery. Zethkar's heart sank as he counted them. More Vex-High ships, no doubt. Their reinforcements had arrived to finish what the main fleet had started. "Sir," his science officer continued, her voice filled with confusion, "these aren't Vex-High signatures. The energy patterns are completely different. I've never seen anything like this configuration before." Queen Vexithara's expression on the screen shifted from amusement to curiosity, then to something approaching concern. "What manner of interference is this?" she hissed. The answer came as 12 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. But these weren't like any vessels in the known galaxy. Where Valorian ships were elegant curves of polished metal and energy fields, and Vex-High vessels were organic nightmares of living tissue and bone, these new arrivals were something else entirely. They were angular, aggressive, built from gray-black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange markings covered their hulls, and weapon arrays bristled from every surface like the spines of some mechanical predator. Each ship moved with purpose, their formation speaking of discipline and deadly intent. Unknown vessels, this is Commander Zethkar of the Valorian Coalition. Please identify yourselves. The response came in clear, unaccented galactic standard, spoken with calm confidence. Commander, this is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Defense Force vessel, Indomitable. We received your distress call through the quantum relay network. Apologies for the delay, but we had to collect some friends for the party. Zethkar blinked in confusion. Earth? He had heard whispers of the young species from the Outer Rim territories, the ones who had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. But what could such a primitive species possibly offer against the Vex-High swarm? Captain Mitchell, he began carefully, I appreciate your arrival, but I must warn you. The Vex-High are extremely dangerous. They've destroyed entire fleets. Perhaps it would be better if you withdrew while you still can. The human's response was unexpected. She laughed. It wasn't the cruel amusement of the Vex-High Queen, but something warm and confident that somehow made Zethkar feel a spark of hope he hadn't felt in cycles. Commander, I appreciate the warning, but we didn't come all this way to run. Besides, her voice took on a harder edge, humans have a particular dislike for bullies who pick on civilians. Queen Vexithara, isn't it? The Vex-High Queen's compound eyes fixed on the screen with renewed interest. So, the infant species comes to play warrior. How amusing. Your ships are small, your numbers few. Do you truly believe you can stand against the swarm that has devoured systems? Ma'am, Captain Mitchell replied with deadly politeness, we're not here to stand against you. We're here to introduce you to some friends of ours. You see, when we heard about your little harvesting operation, we made some calls. As if summoned by her words, space around the human ships began to shimmer. More vessels appeared, dozens of them. But these weren't human ships. Zethkar recognized Kronar dreadnoughts, their massive hulls scarred from countless battles. Siluran stealth frigates materialized from nowhere, their adaptive camouflage dropping away to reveal sleek predatory forms. Even massive Goliathan siege platforms emerged from hyperspace, their ancient bulk bristling with weapons that could crack planets. You see, Your Majesty, Captain Mitchell continued, humans might be new to the galaxy, but we've made friends quickly, and when we told them about your species' particular hobbies, well, let's just say they weren't impressed. The Kronar remember their colony at Vega Prime. The Silurans haven't forgotten the mining station at Procyon. And the Galithians, they're still angry about what you did to the archaeological expedition at Rigel. Queen Vexithara's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation that Zethkar recognized from intelligence briefings. The Vex-High had faced each of these species individually and had emerged victorious through superior numbers and coordination, but together, in this formation, led by these unknown humans. This changes nothing, the Queen hissed, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. We are the swarm. We have consumed countless worlds. Your alliance of convenience cannot stand against us. Maybe you're right, Captain Mitchell admitted. But here's the thing about humans, Your Majesty. We've got this funny habit of proving people wrong, especially when innocent lives are at stake. The human ships began moving forward, and the Allied fleet moved with them. Zethkar watched in amazement as the formation advanced with perfect coordination. Each species maintained their own tactical doctrines, yet somehow they moved as one force. The Kronar ships formed the center, their heavy armor and massive guns creating an anvil. The Siluran frigates spread wide, preparing to strike at flanks and weak points. The Goliathan platforms hung back, their siege weapons charging with ominous energy. And the human ships? They moved like nothing Zethkar had ever seen. Fast, aggressive, taking point positions that should have been suicide runs. Their formation seemed almost reckless, as if they were eager for the fight to begin. "All coalition ships," Captain Mitchell's voice came over the comm, "recommend you fall back and continue the civilian evacuation. We'll handle things from here." "Captain," Zethkar protested, "my ships can still fight. We won't abandon our duty." "Commander, with respect, your people have been fighting alone for too long. You've done more than enough. Let us take it from here. Trust me, we've been preparing for this kind of fight for a long time." Before Zethkar could respond, Queen Vex Thara's voice cut across all frequencies. "Enough of this posturing. All ships, attack formation. Show these fools why the galaxy fears the swarm." The Vex-High fleet surged forward, their bioships moving with the fluid grace of living creatures. Plasma cannons and organic missiles launched in waves, filling space with deadly energy. Zethkar expected to see the Allied fleet shatter under the assault, just as his own forces had been scattered. Instead, he witnessed something that would haunt his dreams and fill his reports for years to come. The human ships didn't retreat or take defensive positions. They accelerated directly into the Vex-High attack, their angular forms cutting through the plasma barrage like predators diving on prey. Point defense systems that Zethkar hadn't even noticed activated, filling space around each human vessel with intersecting fields of energy that turned incoming missiles into brief fireworks. The Indomitable led the charge, its weapons systems coming online with mechanical precision. Zethkar had seen many weapon technologies in his career, but what the humans unleashed was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Rails of magnetic energy hurled projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, while energy weapons fired in rapid pulses that seemed to cut through Vex-High bioarmor like heated blades through flesh. But it wasn't just the weapons that amazed him. It was how they fought. Where other species relied on formation tactics and overwhelming firepower, the humans fought like pack hunters. Each ship seemed to know instinctively where its companions were, what they were doing, what they needed. They covered each other's approaches, shared targeting data in real time, and moved with a coordination that made even the Vex-High swarm look clumsy by comparison. The first Vex-High ship to fall was a destroyer-class bioship that had been focusing its fire on the retreating coalition forces. 3 human frigates approached it from different angles, their weapons synchronized. The combined assault overwhelmed the creature's regenerative capabilities, and it died in a blaze of bioluminescent death spasms. Queen Vex Thara's image flickered on the screen, her compound eyes reflecting what Zethkar was beginning to recognize as shock. "Impossible," she whispered. "No species fights like this. You move as if you share a single mind, yet you maintain individual initiative. How?" Captain Mitchell's response came while her ship dodged through a formation of Vex-High fighters, her guns never stopping their deadly work. "Practice, Your Majesty. Lots and lots of practice. You see, humans have been fighting wars since before we learned to make fire. We've had plenty of time to get good at it." The battle evolved into something beyond Zethkar's experience. The Kronar ships engaged the main Vex-High battle line, their massive guns trading blows with biocannons in thunderous exchanges. The Siluran frigates struck like shadows, appearing behind Vex-High ships to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing again into their stealth fields. The Goliathan siege platforms remained at distance, their ancient weapons reaching across impossible ranges to cripple the largest Vex-High hive ships. But the humans were everywhere at once. They seemed to anticipate every Vex-High tactic, counter every strategy before it could fully develop. When a group of biofighters tried to overwhelm a Kronar dreadnought, human interceptors were already moving to intercept. When Vex-High ships attempted to break through to attack the civilian evacuation, human vessels appeared in their path like an immovable barrier. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, her voice filled with awe, "the Vex-High formation is beginning to fragment. They're losing cohesion." Zethkar could see it happening on the tactical display. The swarm that had seemed so unstoppable was beginning to break apart. Individual bioships were turning to flee, abandoning their formation as the coordinated assault of the Allied fleet tore through their ranks. Queen Vexithara appeared on screen one final time, her image corrupted by static as her command ship took damage. "This is not possible," she repeated, her voice now carrying something Zethkar had never heard from a Vexhai before. Fear. "We are the ultimate predators. We have consumed worlds. How do you fight like this?" Captain Mitchell's response came as her ship delivered the killing blow to another Vexhai cruiser. "Your Majesty, you made one critical mistake in your calculations." "What mistake?" the Queen demanded. "You assumed that because humans are new to space, we're new to war. But the thing about humans is, we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know every trick, every strategy, every dirty tactic that warfare has to offer. And then we learned something even more dangerous." "What?" Queen Vexithara's voice was barely a whisper. "We learned how to stop fighting each other and start fighting together." The screen went dark as the Vexhai command ship exploded under concentrated fire from 3 human vessels. Around them, the remaining bioships of the swarm began their retreat, their formations shattered, their coordination broken. Zethkar stared at the tactical display in amazement. In less than 2 hours, these humans and their allies had accomplished what the entire coalition military had been unable to do in 3 years of warfare. They had broken the Vexhai swarm. "Commander Zethkar," Captain Mitchell's voice came over the comm, now relaxed and friendly again. "How's that evacuation coming along?" "Complete, Captain. All civilians are safely aboard the refugee ships and ready for jump to coalition space." "Excellent. My compliments to your crews, Commander. You held the line when it mattered most. That took real courage." As Zethkar watched the last of the Vexhai ships disappear into hyperspace, he realized that everything had changed. The galaxy had always been a dangerous place, full of predators and prey, hunters and the hunted. But now there was something new in the darkness between the stars. Humanity had arrived, and they had brought friends. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, the Galaxy Broadcasting Network's main studio on Centauri Prime buzzed with activity. Anchor Veltar smoothed her iridescent feathers and adjusted her translation collar as the countdown began. Tonight's interview would reach every civilized world in the galaxy, and the implications were staggering. "Good evening, beings of all species," she began, her melodious voice carrying to billions of listeners. "I'm Veltar Kamoth, and tonight we have a very special guest joining us via quantum link from Earth. Captain Sarah Mitchell, the human commander who led the alliance that broke the Vexhai swarm 3 months ago." The screen shifted to show Captain Mitchell in what appeared to be a simple office, though Veltar noticed military awards and commendations covering the walls behind her. The human looked remarkably ordinary for someone who had changed the course of galactic history. "Captain Mitchell, thank you for joining us tonight. I think the question on every being's mind is simple. How did you do it? The Vexhai had defeated every fleet sent against them for 3 years. Captain Mitchell smiled, a gesture that Veltar had learned indicated friendliness among humans. "Well, Veltar, I think there's been some misunderstanding about what happened at Kepler 442b. We didn't defeat the Vexhai because we're somehow superior warriors. We won because we did something the galaxy hadn't seen before. And what was that? We actually worked together." Veltar's head tilted, a gesture of confusion among her species. "I'm afraid I don't understand. The coalition forces were working together. They had ships from 7 different species in their fleet. With respect, they had ships from 7 different species fighting in the same battle. That's not the same thing as working together. Each species was using their own tactics, their own communication protocols, their own command structures. They were allies in name, but they weren't truly unified. The interview was interrupted by a priority communication from the studio's news desk. Veltar, we're receiving reports of another Vex-High attack fleet emerging from the Void Zone. They've struck the mining colonies in the Rigel system. Captain Mitchell's expression hardened. How many ships? Our sources indicate at least 100 biovessels, including several hive ships. The local defense force has already fallen back to the inner system. Veltar, I'm afraid we'll have to continue this interview later. Earth Command is already scrambling response fleets. Captain, surely you're not suggesting that humanity alone can handle a force that size. Mitchell's smile returned, but this time it carried a different quality. Oh, we're not going alone. The beauty of the alliance system we've built is that everyone knows their role. By the time our ships reach Rigel, we'll have friends waiting for us. The interview ended abruptly, leaving Veltar staring at a blank screen. Within hours, her network was tracking the movement of ships throughout the galaxy as the human emergency protocols activated. Admiral Thakran of the Kronar Republic received the alert while reviewing defensive positions around the Tau Ceti colonies. His massive, bear-like form straightened as the tactical display updated with real-time intelligence from human reconnaissance drones that had somehow already reached the Rigel system. Communications, get me Admiral Qatar on the quantum link, he rumbled to his bridge crew. Qatar commanded the Kronar's rapid response fleet, currently stationed 3 systems away from Rigel. The view screen activated, showing Qatar's scarred visage aboard his flagship, the Iron Vengeance. Admiral, I assume you've seen the reports? Indeed. 100 Vex-High bioships, a significant force, but manageable with proper coordination. Have the humans provided tactical analysis? Already received and processed. Their intelligence is remarkably accurate. They've identified 17 hive ships, 31 heavy cruisers, and the rest appear to be fighter-carrier hybrids. The humans are suggesting a pincer movement, with our heavy ships engaging the hive ships directly while their fast attack craft handle the fighters. Thakran nodded approvingly. The humans had learned quickly that different species excelled at different types of warfare. Kronar ships were built for straight-up fighting, their massive armor and heavy weapons perfect for trading blows with large targets. Human ships, on the other hand, seemed designed for speed and precision. Estimated time to arrival at Rigel? If we leave within the hour, 18 standard hours, the humans will arrive approximately 6 hours before us, but they're coordinating with Siluran stealth squadrons to gather intelligence and harass the Vex-High flanks until we arrive. What impressed Thakran most about working with humans wasn't their technology or even their tactical skills. It was their organizational ability. In the 3 months since Kepler 442b, they had established communication networks, standardized tactical protocols, and created a command structure that somehow managed to coordinate dozens of species without stepping on anyone's territorial sensitivities. Admiral, I'm also receiving reports that the Goliathan siege fleet has been activated. They're moving from their positions in the Outer Rim. Thakran's eyes widened slightly. The Galithians were ancient, their ships massive and powerful. But they moved slowly and rarely committed to combat unless the threat was truly significant. For them to activate their siege fleet meant the humans had convinced them this was more than a simple raid. How did the humans manage that? The Galithians haven't left their home systems in 50 years. According to the communication logs, Captain Mitchell personally spoke with Elder Golmoth. Apparently, she provided detailed tactical analysis showing that this isn't a random attack. The Vex-High are testing our response capabilities. The implications hit Thakran immediately. If the Vex-High were probing their defenses, it meant the swarm wasn't broken. They were regrouping, adapting, preparing for a larger offensive. The Battle of Kepler 442b had been a tactical victory, but strategically, the war was far from over. Communications. Signal the fleet. We depart for Rigel in 1 hour, and get me a direct line to Captain Mitchell. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as the Alliance network activated. Siluran stealth ships emerged from hidden bases, their crews eager for another chance at the species that had destroyed their outer colonies. Valorian ships joined Kronar formations, their elegant designs contrasting sharply with the brutal efficiency of Republic vessels. Even the enigmatic Gelnari contributed, their biomechanical ships adding their unique capabilities to the growing armada. But it was in Earth's orbital shipyards that the most interesting developments were occurring. Commander Elena Vasquez walked through the construction bay of Luna Station, watching as the final components of humanity's newest ship class were installed. The Retribution-class assault carriers represented everything humans had learned about space warfare in their brief time among the stars. "Status report, Chief Kowalski?" she asked the grizzled engineering supervisor overseeing the installation of the ship's primary weapon systems. "All primary systems online, Commander. The new tactical AI is interfacing properly with Allied command protocols, and the fighter bays are fully stocked with the Mark 7 Valkyries." Vasquez nodded, walking toward the observation deck that overlooked the main hangar. Below her, dozens of sleek fighter craft sat in perfect rows, their pilots running final pre-flight checks. These weren't the desperate defenders who had faced the Vex High at Kepler 442b. These were volunteers from across human space, trained specifically for multi-species operations. "Ma'am, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Chen aboard the Indomitable." The wall screen activated, showing Admiral Sarah Chen, recently promoted after her actions at Kepler 442b, standing on the bridge of humanity's flagship. Behind her, Vasquez could see officers from at least 4 different species working at various stations. "Elena, we're moving to Rigel in 2 hours. The Retribution. Ready for her first combat deployment?" "All systems green, Admiral. My crews are eager to test the new Alliance protocols under combat conditions." "Good. We're expecting significant Vex High resistance, but our allies are committed. This is our chance to prove that Kepler 442b wasn't a fluke." Vasquez understood the subtext. There were still species in the galaxy who viewed humanity's rapid rise with suspicion. The hegemony powers, in particular, had questioned whether humans could be trusted with the kind of influence they were accumulating. A decisive victory at Rigel would go a long way toward cementing humanity's position as a legitimate galactic power. "Admiral, what's the latest intelligence on Vex High adaptations? Have they modified their tactics since the last engagement?" Chen's expression grew serious. "That's the concerning part. Our scout ships report that the Vex High formation is different this time. More disciplined, less swarming. They appear to have learned from their defeat." This was what military strategists had feared. The Vex High were adaptive, their hive minds capable of processing defeats and incorporating new strategies. If they had analyzed the Alliance tactics from Kepler 442b, they would undoubtedly have developed counters. Have we shared this intelligence with our allies? Full tactical briefings have been distributed to all fleet commanders. The Kronar are particularly interested in the modifications to Vex High bioarmor. Apparently, their standard weapons were less effective in the last skirmish near Procyon. Vasquez frowned. The Kronar relied heavily on kinetic weapons and heavy energy cannons. If the Vex High had developed countermeasures, it could significantly impact the Alliance's tactical options. What about the Silurans? Have their stealth systems maintained effectiveness? Mixed results. The Vex High seem to have developed new sensor capabilities, but the Silurans have adapted in response. Their latest stealth modifications should maintain tactical advantage, at least for the first engagement. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the tactical station. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Vex High fleet at Rigel. They're broadcasting on open frequencies." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Put it through, but keep recording. I want every word analyzed." The screen shifted to show a Vex High queen, but this one was different from the commander they had faced before. Where Queen Vexthara had been arrogant and dismissive, this one radiated cold intelligence. Her compound eyes seemed to focus directly on the camera as she spoke. "Humans of the Infant Alliance," she began, her voice carrying none of the mocking tone they had grown accustomed to. "I am Queen Kithura, Swarm Coordinator of the Third Expansion. We have studied your tactics, analyzed your capabilities, adapted our strategies. The victory at Kepler 442b will not be repeated." She paused, her mandibles clicking in what human xenobiologists had identified as contemplation. "You fight with coordination unusual for individualistic species. This presents an interesting tactical challenge. We have developed appropriate responses." The transmission cut to show the Vexhai fleet in formation around Rigel's outer planets. Vasquez felt her breath catch. The bioships weren't arranged in the chaotic swarm pattern they had seen before. Instead, they moved in tight formations, disciplined and organized, almost military in their precision. "Your alliance coordination relies on real-time communication and shared tactical awareness," Queen Kethura continued. "We have prepared countermeasures. You will find us much more challenging opponents." The transmission ended, leaving the human commanders staring at a tactical display that showed a very different enemy than they had faced before. "Elena," Admiral Chen said quietly, "I think we're about to discover just how adaptable the Vexhai really are." As the human fleet prepared for departure, similar preparations were taking place throughout Allied space. But for the first time since the alliance had formed, there was uncertainty in the air. The enemy had learned, adapted, prepared. The next battle would test not just their military coordination, but the very foundations of the alliance itself. In the depths of space, the Vexhai fleet waited with newfound patience. Queen Kethura had studied the recordings from Kepler 442b countless times, analyzing every human tactic, every Allied maneuver, every weakness in their coordination. The swarm had evolved, and evolution was what had made the Vexhai the dominant predators of the galaxy. Soon, they would teach these upstart humans and their alliance the true meaning of adaptation. The Battle of Rigel began unlike any engagement in recorded galactic history. As Admiral Chen's combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, they found the Vexhai waiting in perfect formation around the gas giant Rigel Prime. No chaotic swarm, no desperate charges, just cold, calculated positioning that spoke of learned lessons and adapted strategies. "All ships, maintain formation distance," Admiral Chen commanded from the bridge of the Indomitable. "Sensors are detecting some kind of interference pattern. The Vexhai are broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously." Lieutenant Commander Torres, the human fleet's xenobiologist, studied the incoming data. "Admiral, they're using some kind of harmonic disruption. It's designed to interfere with our communication protocols." Chen nodded grimly. Queen Kethura had done her homework. Alliance coordination depended on real-time communication between species with different technological standards and command structures. Disrupt that communication, and the alliance became just another collection of individual fleets. "Can we compensate?" "Working on it, ma'am. But they've specifically targeted the frequency ranges used by Kronar tactical networks and Siluran stealth communications. This isn't random interference. They studied our coordination methods." On the tactical display, Chen watched as the Kronar heavy cruisers began to drift slightly out of formation. Their communication with the main fleet degraded. The Siluran stealth ships were still invisible, but their position reports were becoming sporadic and unclear. "Ma'am," the communications officer reported, "Admiral Thakaran is requesting direct laser communication link. He says Kronar's ships can maintain formation without real-time tactical updates, but they need target prioritization." Chen was about to respond when space itself seemed to ripple around the Vexhai formation. The bioships began moving, but not in the wild, aggressive charges they had used before. Instead, they advanced in coordinated waves, each group moving to specific positions that would maximize their tactical advantage while minimizing alliance coordination opportunities. "They're forcing us into individual engagements," Chen realized aloud. "Look at their positioning. They're creating tactical situations where our ships have to fight independently, where our coordination advantages are neutralized." The first wave of Vex-High fighters launched from their carrier organisms, but instead of swarming toward the Allied fleet, they spread out in a wide arc, forcing the Alliance fighters to spread their own formations thin to provide adequate coverage. "Clever," muttered Commander Vasquez from the Retribution. "They're using our own tactical doctrine against us. We taught ourselves to fight as coordinated groups, so they're breaking us into pieces where coordination is impossible." Chen activated the emergency communication protocol, sending laser burst messages directly to each Allied fleet commander. The system was slower than their normal quantum-linked coordination, but it was immune to the Vex-High interference. "All commanders, this is Admiral Chen. The enemy has adapted to counter our standard coordination protocols. We're switching to Contingency Plan 7, Acknowledge Reception." Contingency Plan 7 was something the Alliance had developed during their 3 months of joint training exercises. Instead of relying on real-time coordination, each fleet would operate with pre-established tactical assignments, checking in only at specific intervals to adjust the overall strategy. Admiral Thokran's response came through immediately. "Kronar forces acknowledge. Moving to heavy engagement positions. We'll focus on hive ships as assigned." The Siluran commander's message was characteristically brief. "Stealth squadrons confirm. Harassment and flanking operations proceeding." But as the battle developed, it became clear that the Vex-High had prepared for more than just communication disruption. When the first Kronar heavy cruiser engaged a Vex-High hive ship, its standard kinetic weapons struck bio-armor that seemed to absorb and dissipate the impact energy. The Vex-High ship shuddered, but remained functional, its return fire striking with devastating accuracy. "Admiral, the Kronar are reporting minimal damage to target vessels," Torres reported. "The Vex-High appear to have developed some kind of adaptive armor system." Chen watched as the battle unfolded across multiple screens. The Vex-High weren't just using new armor. They had analyzed every weapon system used at Kepler 442b and developed specific countermeasures. Kronar kinetic weapons were absorbed by energy-dissipating biocompounds. Siluran precision strikes were deflected by rapidly shifting armor plates. Even the massive siege weapons of the Goliathan platforms seemed less effective against targets that had been specifically engineered to resist them. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Queen Kethura." The main screen activated, showing the Vex-High Queen aboard her command vessel. Behind her, Chen could see displays showing real-time tactical analysis of the battle, proving that the Vex-High had developed their own coordination capabilities. "Admiral Chen," the Queen began, her voice carrying satisfaction rather than mockery. "Your alliance fought well at Kepler 442b. We have learned from that encounter. Observe." The screen shifted to show tactical displays of the current battle. Chen watched in dismay as Vex-High formations moved with precision that matched or exceeded Alliance coordination. Each bioship seemed to know exactly where its companions were, what they were doing, and how to maximize their collective effectiveness. "Your species relies on technological coordination," Queen Kethura continued. "We are coordination. Every ship in our fleet shares the same mind, the same purpose, the same instant awareness of battlefield conditions. You cannot disrupt what is inherent to our existence." Chen felt a chill of recognition. The Vex-High weren't just using better tactics. They had turned the Alliance's greatest strength into a weakness. Where Alliance ships had to communicate their intentions and coordinate their movements, Vex-High ships moved with the perfect synchronization of a single organism. Furthermore, the Queen added, we have studied your individual species' tactical preferences and developed specific countermeasures. Your Kronar allies favor direct assault. Our new bio-armor absorbs kinetic energy and converts it to strengthen our defensive capabilities. Your Siluran friends rely on stealth and precision. Our enhanced sensory organisms can now track their ships even through their best camouflage technology. The tactical display confirmed the Queen's claims. Siluran stealth ships were being detected and engaged by Vex-High fighters that seemed to know exactly where they were. Kronar heavy weapons were having minimal effect on targets that grew stronger with each hit they absorbed. "But you have taught us something valuable, Admiral Chen," Queen Kethiora said, her compound eyes reflecting what Chen was beginning to recognize as genuine respect. Individual excellence can achieve remarkable results when properly coordinated. We have incorporated this lesson into our own strategic doctrine. The transmission ended, but its implications were clear. The Vex-High had not just adapted to alliance tactics. They had evolved their entire approach to warfare, combining their natural coordination with learned tactical flexibility. "Admiral," Commander Vasquez's voice came over the communication link. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the Vex-High command ships. They're preparing something big." Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Analysis?" "Unknown energy pattern, Admiral. It's not matching any known Vex-High weapon signature from our databases." The answer came as space around the Alliance fleet began to shimmer with the same energy patterns they had seen around the Vex-High formation. But this time, the effect wasn't confined to enemy ships. It was expanding outward, reaching toward the Alliance fleet with obvious hostile intent. "They're trying to extend their coordination field to interfere with our ships directly," Torres realized. "If they can disrupt our internal systems the way they disrupted our communications—" Chen didn't need him to finish the thought. Ships that couldn't coordinate internally were just floating targets. "Emergency Protocol 9, she ordered. "All ships switch to hardened systems, manual backups only. Cut all non-essential electronic systems." But as the Vex-High energy field reached the first Alliance ships, something unexpected happened. The human vessels, designed with the paranoia of a species that had spent centuries fighting electronic warfare, weathered the interference with minimal effects. Kronar ships, built with massive redundancy and mechanical backup systems, continued operating. Even the Siluran vessels, despite their reliance on advanced technology, had safeguards that kept them functional. It was the Vex-High who seemed surprised by this development. Queen Kethiора's image appeared again on the screen, her expression showing confusion for the first time. "Your ships should be disabled," she stated. "Our field generators were calibrated to disrupt the electronic systems observed at Kepler 442b. Admiral Chen smiled, feeling the first stirring of hope since the battle had begun. "Your Majesty, you made the same mistake at Kepler 442b that you're making now. You're fighting the last battle, not this one." "Explain." "You studied our tactics from Kepler 442b and developed countermeasures, but you assumed we weren't also learning from that engagement. The 3 months since that battle weren't just time for you to adapt. We've been preparing too." Chen activated the fleet-wide communication system, broadcasting on frequencies the Vex-High interference couldn't disrupt. "All ships, activate Enhanced Coordination Protocol. Time to show our friends what humans do best." Across the Allied fleet, ships began implementing tactics they had developed during countless training exercises over the past 3 months. But these weren't the same coordination methods the Vex-High had studied. Humans had done what they did best. They had innovated. Instead of relying solely on real-time communication, human tactical AI systems began predicting and pre-positioning Allied ships for optimal coordination. Kronar vessels found themselves moving into positions where their weapons would be most effective, just as human ships cleared firing lanes they hadn't even known they needed. Siluran stealth ships appeared at exactly the right moments to strike at targets that had been weakened by coordinated attacks from multiple directions. "How?" Queen Kethora demanded, her voice losing its calculated composure. "You cannot coordinate without communication. You cannot predict our movements without real-time intelligence." "You're right," Chen admitted. "We can't predict your movements, but we don't need to. We're not fighting your movements. We're fighting your assumptions." The battle began to shift as the Alliance implemented their new doctrine. Instead of trying to out-coordinate the Vex High, they began fighting in ways that made coordination irrelevant. Human ships engaged in seemingly random attack patterns that somehow resulted in devastating combined effects. Kronar vessels abandoned their traditional formation, fighting in favor of individual tactical excellence that supported the overall battle plan without requiring constant communication. Most importantly, the Alliance began using the Vex High's own adaptations against them. Bio-armor that absorbed kinetic energy became a weakness when human ships began targeting specific points with precisely timed energy weapons, overloading the absorption capacity. Enhanced sensory organs became vulnerabilities when subjected to coordinated sensory overload attacks. "You see, Your Majesty," Chen explained as her ship delivered a devastating attack on a Vex High heavy cruiser. "The thing about evolution is that it only works if you're adapting to the right environment. You adapted to fight the Alliance you faced 3 months ago, but we're not that Alliance anymore." The tide of battle began to turn as Vex High ships found themselves outmaneuvered by tactics they couldn't predict or counter. Their perfect coordination became a weakness as Alliance ships attacked in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated to exploit the predictability of hive mind responses. Queen Kethora's final transmission came as her command ship began taking critical damage from a combined assault by ships from 4 different species, each attacking from a different vector with weapons specifically chosen to complement rather than duplicate each other's effects. "This is impossible," she whispered, her voice carrying something Chen had never heard from a Vex High before: despair. "We studied everything. We adapted to every tactic. How can you still defeat us?" Chen's response was gentle, but firm. "Because you're still thinking like predators, Your Majesty. You study your prey, learn their weaknesses, and develop better hunting techniques. But we're not your prey. We never were." "Then what are you?" "We're teachers, Your Majesty. And today's lesson is that the best way to win a war isn't to become a better predator. It's to help your friends become better hunters." The Vex High fleet began its retreat, their formations finally breaking as the reality of their situation became clear. They had adapted perfectly to fight the Alliance they had defeated at Kepler 442b, but the Alliance they faced at Rigel was something entirely new. As the last Vex High ships disappeared into hyperspace, Chen received communications from her allied commanders. Admiral Thokran's message was characteristically direct. "Impressive adaptation, Admiral. The humans continue to exceed expectations." The Siluran commander's response was more thoughtful. "The enemy learned to fight our strengths. You taught us to fight without them. This is a valuable lesson." But it was the message from Elder Golmoth of the Galithians that carried the most significance. "Young Admiral, your species has shown wisdom beyond your years. The Goliathan Assembly wishes to discuss formal Alliance membership for humanity." Chen stared at the message, understanding its implications. Formal Alliance membership would make humanity equal partners with species that had been spacefaring for millennia. It was recognition that humans had earned their place not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through something far more valuable: the ability to help others become better than they were alone. As the Allied fleet regrouped and began rescue operations for the damaged Rigel colonies, Chen reflected on the path that had led them here. 6 months ago, humans had been an unknown species from the galactic rim. Today, they were being offered equal partnership with the galaxy's greatest powers. The Vex High would return. Of that she was certain. They would adapt again, develop new strategies, perhaps even more sophisticated countermeasures. But Chen was no longer concerned about that eventuality, because the greatest lesson of the Battle of Rigel wasn't about tactics or technology or even adaptation. It was about the fundamental difference between a swarm that moved as one mind and an alliance that thought as many minds working toward a common goal. The Vex High could adapt to fight any individual species, no matter how advanced or how powerful. But they couldn't adapt to fight the unlimited creative potential of different species learning from each other, growing together, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Humanity had brought more than ships and weapons to the galaxy. They had brought the most dangerous idea any species could possess, that cooperation could make everyone stronger. And that, Chen realized, was why they would ultimately win this war. Not because humans were better fighters, but because they were better teachers. And in a galaxy full of species waiting to learn, that made all the difference.